You woke up this morning because a pig was licking your face. It's not a joke, it's November. It's freezing, and your family's prized sow has spent the night sleeping exactly 3 inches from your head. You don't shoo her away. You actually cuddle closer. Why? Because that pig is the only thing keeping you from getting frostbite. We've all been told the same story about the Middle Ages. You're a peasant, you're covered in mud, you work 20 hours a day, get whipped by a sadistic lord, eat dirt and die of the plague at 25. But almost everything you think you know about your medieval life is wrong. Let's start with the work. You've probably heard that medieval peasants worked themselves to death. They didn't. Actually, you have more days off than a modern corporate lawyer. Sure, during the spring planting and the autumn harvest, your life is absolute hell. You're in the fields before the sun is up, pulling heavy wooden ploughs through thick, icy clay until your hands bleed. If you don't get the seeds in the ground, everyone you love starves. The stakes are that simple. Therefore, you work like a maniac. But once the crops are in, everything changes. At the Catholic Church practically runs your calendar, and they love a holiday. There's Christmas, Easter, Pentecost, and dozens of saints' days. On these days, labour is strictly forbidden. If your Lord tries to make you harvest wheat on St. Jude's Day, the local priest will literally threaten him with eternal damnation. So you stop, you feast, you drink. Historians estimate that the average medieval peasant worked about 150 days a year. The rest of the time was spent celebrating, sleeping, or hanging out at the local tavern. You have more leisure time than the average modern office worker. But don't get too comfortable, because while you have the time off, you don't have the money. In fact, you don't really have money at all. You're a serf. You don't own the land you sweat on. The Lord owns it. You're legally bound to this dirt. You can't leave the village without permission. You can't marry who you want without paying a tax. And you can't even grind your own grain. If you want to turn your wheat into flour, you have to use the Lord's mill. And the Lord's miller is going to take a massive chunk of your harvest as a fee. You try to bypass this by keeping a hand mill hidden under your floorboards. But if the Lord's bailiff catches you, they'll smash it to pieces and fine you every single penny you don't have. Therefore, you comply. You pay the mill tax, you pay the land tax, you pay the church tax called a tithe, which takes 10% of everything you produce. By the time everyone has taken their cut, you're left with barely enough to survive. But you do survive, mostly on beer and bread. You don't drink water. Not because it's dirty, though sometimes it is, but because beer is actually safer and packed with nutrients. It's thick, cloudy, and low in alcohol. Everyone drinks it. You, your wife, your toddler, your grandmother, you're all constantly mildly buzzed. And your house? It's not a cosy cottage. It's a one-room hovel made of mud, straw, and animal dung packed over a wooden frame. There are no windows, just slits in the wall to keep the draft out. There's no chimney either. The fire sits right in the middle of the room, filling the space with thick, stinging smoke that slowly escapes through the thatched roof. But the smoke serves a purpose. It kills the bugs living in the straw. And then there are the roommates. When the winter cold gets violent enough to crack tree trunks, you can't leave your animals outside. If the sheep freeze, you lose your wool. If the oxen die, you can't plough. So you bring them inside. You share your single room with chickens, goats, sheep, and that face-licking pig. The smell is unimaginable. Ammonia, manure, wet wool, and unwashed human bodies. It's a biological soup. Yet, surprisingly, you aren't as dirty as people think. You don't take hot baths, because firewood is expensive and heating water takes hours. But you wash your hands and face every morning. You use linen rags to scrub your skin. You care about smelling decent, even if your roommate is a goat. But then, the rain stops. One year, the spring rains don't come. The ground turns to iron. The seeds rot in the dirt. Suddenly, your holiday calendar doesn't matter. There is no backup plan. There are no supermarkets, no global supply chains, no government food stamps. If the local harvest fails, the price of grains skyrockets. But you still have to pay your taxes. The Lord still wants his share. The church still wants its 10%. Therefore, you start cutting corners. First, you mix clay or ground acorns into your bread dough to make it stretch. It tastes like dirt, but it fills the belly. Then you slaughter the sheep. You need the meat now, even though it means you won't have wool next winter. Finally, you eat the seed grain, the grain you were supposed to save to plant next year. It's suicide, but hunger makes you desperate. This is the great famine. You watch your neighbours shrink. Their skin turns grey. People start eating dogs, cats, and bark off the trees. The weak die first, the babies, the elderly, but you survive. You make it to the next year, except your body is ruined. Years of eating mouldy, damp grain have left your immune system completely shattered, which is exactly when the ships arrive from the Black Sea. They bring silk, spices, and rats. Within months, a strange sickness sweeps through the continent. People wake up with black, painful swellings in their armpits and groin. By nightfall, they're coughing up blood. By the next morning, they're dead. It's the Black Death. Priests refuse to give last rites because they're terrified of catching it. The Lord flees to his country manor. The social order completely collapses. In your village, half the people die in a single month. You spend your mornings dragging the bodies of your friends to a massive communal pit outside the churchyard. But then the plague passes, and something incredible happens. Suddenly, there are barely any peasants left to work the land. The fields are empty, the weeds are taking over. The Lord comes back from his manor. He needs his harvest. He needs you. But for the first time in your life, you have the power. Before the plague, if you complained, the Lord would just replace you. But now, there is no replacement. Therefore, you demand more. You want higher wages, you want lower rents, you want the freedom to leave the estate and work for someone else. The Lord is furious. He tries to pass laws to freeze your wages. He tries to make it illegal for you to wear nice clothes or eat white bread. If he doesn't pay you, you'll just walk down the road to the next lord, who is so desperate for workers, he'll gladly pay you double and look the other way. The feudal system, which had kept your family in chains for centuries, is shattered. Not by a grand revolution or a glorious war, but by a microscopic bacteria that leveled the playing field. You started your life cuddling a pig just to keep from freezing to death, but you ended it with coin in your pocket, eating meat on Tuesdays, and realizing that the powerful lords who claimed to be chosen by God needed you far more than you ever needed them.